Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Nathan and today we're going to be talking about something that's kind of near and dear to my heart, which is customizing monsters for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Now, what we're going to talk about today, why would you customize a monster, and then kind of the main approach that I use with the Dungeon Master's Guide as a template to do that. I'm gonna go through a couple examples. I will level up a zombie and I will level down a mummy lord and kind of talk about how I would use these monsters in practical play. So let's get started. These are our targets again, the zombie and the mummy lord. So why customize a monster? So there's several reasons why you might want to do this. Perhaps there's a particular monster fantasy that you want, but there's no monster in the book that's appropriate. There might be something that's close and that kind of thing. And by all means, you can reflavor a monster as necessary. Maybe, take the stat block, but when you describe it to your players, describe it differently. Maybe change a feature or maybe a resistance here or there and that kind of thing. And that's a relatively simple thing to do. Another reason that you might want to customize a monster, and this is the main thing I'm going to dive into a little bit today, is there's a monster you want to use, but it's not level appropriate for your players. Maybe the CR is too low. It's a low level monster. Your players are higher levels, but you still want to fight this kind of enemy. But there isn't really something that is both level appropriate and kind of fits the theme of what's going on in the campaign. A zombie is a great example of that. And also perhaps, let's say that there's an enemy that you want to fit the theme, but your players aren't a high enough level to fight it yet. You might want to down level a monster like that to be something closer to what your players should be expecting to fight. So the things I'm going to be referencing here, we're going to be referencing the encounter balance table in the Dungeon Master's, which is in the Dungeon Master's Guide on page 82, and kind of the monster creation guidelines on the Dungeon Master's Guide on page 273 and beyond. So what is the approach from the Dungeon Master's Guide? Now, for reference on that encounter table, the way I'm going to be doing our examples today, we're going to be balancing around a party of 4 5th level characters. So an easy encounter is 1,000 experience to 2,000, a medium is 2,000 to 3,000, a hard is 3,000 to 4,400, and a deadly encounter is 4,400 and above. Now the ones I'm going to be creating, I'm going to be aiming for that hard encounter. And let's talk about kind of what the Dungeon Master's Guide approach is to at least making a custom monster. Now, as for our monsters, we're going to make our zombies from a CR 1/4 into a CR 2, and we're going to aim to fight 4 of them. If you're fighting 4 monsters per that encounter difficulty table, you're going to multiply the experience value by 2. So 4 zombies, each with an at a CR of 2 would have 900 experience each for a total of 3,600, which would put you right in the middle of that hard category. And our mummy lord that we're going to down level, normally those are CR 15. I'm going to try to drop it to a CR 8, and those are our 3,900 for a CR 8 monster. So that'll put it again in that hard encounter range. So the approach from the Dungeon Master's Guide. The first thing to do is to determine the goal CR. What is the CR of the monster that you want to create? And as you can see, we've already done that up over there. So the next thing is to determine the target armor class, hit points, the hit bonus, and the damage per round of the monster. This is in a table on page 274, and I'll be talking about the values that we have here. The next thing is you're going to determine the final challenge rating of the monster. You're going to calculate the defensive challenge rating of the monster and then the offensive challenge rating of the monster and average them, and that'll be your final challenge rating of the monster. And the way that they calculate those, they look at the health of the monster and then what their effective armor class is, and if it's higher or lower than the value they expect, then you can bump the challenge rating up and down and that kind of thing. And with offense, you're looking at the damage they deal, and if their attack bonus is lower or higher than the expected attack bonus, and then you can bump the CR up or down based on that. So if a monster has a lot of damage on hit but has a low attack bonus, that could be similar to a monster that does lower damage on hit but has a higher attack bonus in terms of challenge rating. Now, this approach, it is formulaic, but it's not entirely straightforward. There's a lot of bouncing around that you can do. Like, if you want your monster to do a little more damage, and you want to keep their hit chance high, maybe you lower their defense or their health, that kind of thing, to tweak it. Like an enemy with a defensive challenge rating of 1 could have an offensive challenge rating of 3, and that kind of thing. And there's honestly a lot of bouncing around that can happen where you're like, if I do this, these things happen, and that kind of thing. There's also a bunch of features that monsters might have, and there's a big table on page 280 for what those should do to account to the monster's challenge rating. I'll talk about that a little bit. And finally, in reality, playtesting is the only real way to determine if the monster that you're creating is fun, and that kind of thing. So now, this approach can be used to both create custom monsters as well as modifying existing ones. It might be a little easier with custom ones, but I personally like, rather than creating monsters from scratch, in a lot of cases, I like to find a monster that is close to what I want in terms of its challenge rating, and then potentially modify things from there to maybe fit the theme. That's a little bit easier in term, other than like this hard up level, down level thing I'm doing here. And I do generally follow this kind of challenge rating thing for like custom bosses and that kind of thing. And I think when you've DM'd for a long time and for a specific party and you know what their characters are capable of, it's easier to design an appropriate boss challenge for them and that kind of thing. And I will say, spellcaster enemies are particularly in the hands of a new DM, an enemy that is reliant on its spellcasting features for some of its challenge is not going to be as difficult as the book presents if they don't use their spells appropriately. So I'll talk about that a little bit when we go into the tactics of the CR8 Mummy Lord that we're going to be doing. So let's get into our level up example. We're going to be trying to level up a zombie, and as you can see over there, I've got a copy of its stat block. Now, we want this creature to be CR2, which means, according to the table on page 274, our target armor class is 13, and our target hit points are 86 to 100. Now, because it has the Undead Fortitude from the table on page 280, this is an effective +7 hit points, according to that table. So, once we get our raw hit point value, we count it to 7 points higher for the sake of that target hit points. For our target attack, the attack bonus for a CR2 creature is +3, and its damage per round is 15 to 20. And as you can see, we're only at 4 down there in the corner. So, and our final CR is going to be an average of offense and defensive challenge rating. So if we drop our defensive challenge rating to 1, our offensive challenge rating can be 3, for example. So, what are we going to do here? I think I want the zombie to be a little more dangerous offensively. I don't want these zombies to be, big piles of hit points that the players will just run through and won't have any, they won't have any issue damaging the player's back. So I'm going to up the offense a little bit, and we'll talk about kind of how we do that. So, the first thing that we are going to do, I'm going to bump our target hit points into the 101 to 115 range. Specifically, we're going to go 102, as you can see there, 13d8 plus 39, and that's going to be a total of 109 hit points with that effective +7 from our Undead Fortitude feature. Now, that is a CR3 creature health pool, but when calculating our defensive challenge rating, for every 2 points our armor class is less than our target, we can count the CR as 1 lower. So I'm going to keep the armor class at 8, and that effectively, because that's 5 points lower, that's still 4, at least 4 lower than our target armor class. So that drops our CR by 2. So we started with a challenge rating target of 2. We went +1 from health, but -2 from armor class. So we're now at a challenge rating 1 in terms of our defensive features. Now, in terms of our target attack, I'm going to bump our attack bonus up to +5. Now, the way I'm doing that is I'm going to bump our strength from 13 to that 16 that you see there with a +3. That increases the challenge rating of the monster's attack to 3. Well, it adds 1 because every 2 points of attack bonus increases the challenge rating by 1 for that damage range. I'm going to keep the 15 to 20 damage per round, and we are going to do a d6 plus 3 bludgeoning, and I'm going to give the monster an extra d6 of necrotic damage on hit. I imagine these zombies as maybe they're empowered by some kind of undead commander or magic that gives them this necrotic energy. That's just how I would do this one in this case. You could just make it 2d6 plus 3 bludgeoning if you wanted. Now, that's only on average 10 damage. So I am going to add a multi-attack feature to these where they get to make 2 attacks on their turn. So now they've got 2 attacks at plus 5, each dealing an average of about 10 damage to get on the top end of that 20 damage per round. Now, there's one more thing I want to add here. In particular, we've met our goals for increasing their health and increasing their damage, but there's one more thing here that I think people don't always account for, and that is the speed of the monster. Zombies are slow inherently. This one has a speed of only 20 feet at base, and it'll be difficult to close on the players if they're trying to stay at range. And something I think, this more powerful version of the zombie should have is something that should make them a greater threat. So I'm going to add another feature, which I'm going to call Final Sprint. So I'm going to say once per day, they can dash as a bonus action. So I imagine that, this is the zombie just putting that last little bit of energy and effort and strength that's left in their limbs to just try to get to their target. And this will let the zombie close distance at the beginning of the encounter and let them get into melee to start doing damage, and, might actually scare the players when the zombie suddenly speeds up and gets to them. Finally, I'm gonna add a Constitution save to these. This makes them a teensy bit better with their undead fortitude, and I think it just kind of adds and enhances that kind of flavor that the zombies have of they take hits and they keep getting back up. And so, these are zombies that the players are going to be fighting. Hopefully they've been fighting zombies all along, and they know that they're weak to radiant damage in terms of preventing their undead fortitude. So if they don't, this will make them that little bit more of that juggernaut, and that's kind of a feel that I think would be great on this monster in particular. And finally, I'm going to rename it to a greater zombie, just so there's a little bit of differential. And honestly, I think this zombie as a CR2 creature would be very fun, and feel free to steal it, but that's kind of how I'm doing the level up process. Again, we have made it a CR1 defensively and a CR3 offensively, and that creates an average of a CR2 monster. So let's do a level down. We're going to talk about leveling down a Mummy Lord for our party of 4 5th level characters. And again, we were targeting a challenge rating of 8, so our thresholds there for the armor class of the Mummy Lord is 16 with 176 to 190 hit points, and our offensive goals are 51 to 56 damage per round with a +7 to hit and a save DC of 16 for their spells. Now, for reference, the Mummy Lord is on page 229 of the Monster Manual, and it's a pretty big stat block, so I'm not going to copy it into its entirety here. So let's take a quick look at what the Mummy Lord's stats are, just from the book at CR15. So their base stats, they have an armor class of 17 and only 97 hit points, but they have a lot of immunities, and at their CR, that's an X 1.5 multiplier to their hit points, so they have about 150 hit points. They have the magic resistance feature, and the table on page 280 says this adds 2 effective armor class. And then they have another effective +2 armor class from having 4 or more saving throw proficiencies. And they also have a spell they can cast that gives them another +2 armor class. So 150 hit points is in the CR6 range. And with 23 AC, that's well above the target for CR15. That boosts them to a CR6 specifically. So that boosts them to a CR10 on the defensive standpoint. Now, in terms of offense, they have a +9 to hit, and they can do 35 damage 4 times because they can use their legendary action potentially to make a whole bunch of fist attacks, and then they can potentially have a spiritual weapon up. So the Mummy Lord, if they're dedicating everything damage per round, could potentially do about 149 to 150 damage per round, which is a CR21 level of damage per round on a monster. Now, with their +9 to hit, this drops it to CR20. So the average of those is CR15, which is what the monster is supposed to be. So as you can tell, the monster, they're basically high offense, low defense in terms of the way that the Mummy Lord is designed at its base. Now, they're also a 10th level caster with the Animate Dead spell, so they might have some minions around, which are probably going to be, CR 1/4 skeletons and zombies, which at the level you fight a CR 15 Mummy Lord might not be that much of a threat. Now, we are going to be down leveling this CR 15 Mummy Lord to challenge rating 8. So I'm going to call this a lesser Mummy Lord. So how are we going to kind of do this here? So again, our defensive targets are an armor class of 16 with 176 to 190 hit points. And our offensive targets are 51 to 56 damage per round with a +7 to hit and a save DC of 16. So I'm going to do an armor class of 14 and a total hit points of 105 here. And I'm also going to keep the magic resistance feature and the save proficiency. They're proficient in Constitution, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma saves. I'm going to change their immunity to non-magical physical damage, so that's bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing, to resistance. I'm going to keep some of their spells, including the Shield of Faith spell, and as a CR 8 monster, their proficiency is now +3. So what this means, we're going to have a +6 effective bonus to our armor class, which increases the natural challenge rating up to +2 by 2. And we're going to have 100, we get to multiply our effective hit points by 1.5 because we have resistance to a common damage type, which brings it up to 157. So the two of those combine to, the effective armor class ups the challenge rating of this monster by 2, but because I lowered it and then increased it by 6, so it's a difference of 4 from our target. And then we have a CR, our hit points more aligns with the CR of a CR 6, so that's a -2. So therefore, our defensive CR rating for our modified Mummy Lord is going to end up at 8, which is our target. Now, for offense, just with our reduction of our proficiency bonus with the Mummy Lord's basic stats, we are at a +7 to hit with a save DC of 15, and this is on track. We do get 4 attacks per round maximum with 3 legendary actions, and I want to keep all of those because as a solo monster, it's really good to have those so that they have something to do all the time and can actually present a threat in terms of action economy. So I'm planning on going to be keeping the spiritual weapon aspect. So our attack damage per hit should be in the 11 to 12 range to try to keep us on target. So therefore, I'm going to change our Rotting Fist attack to do 1d6 plus 4 bludgeoning damage and an additional d6 of necrotic damage. So very similar to our CR2 zombie in terms of how hard its Rotting Fist hits. This is an expected value of 10, and combined with the spiritual weapon, this will get us, well, it's actually 11. This gets us right to 53, which is right in the middle of our target damage range. I'm going to lower the DCs for our Dreadful Glare and all our legendary actions to 14. And as for our spell slots, I'm going to drop this to an 8th level caster. So that means they'll have 4 first level spell slots, 3 second level spell slots, 3 third level spell slots, and 2 fourth level spell slots. And I'm going to keep their known and prepared spell list the same. We're just going to cut off the top end. Now, this results in an offensive challenge rating of 8. And again, this is on target. We should have a good monster for CR8 to fight our players with. So let's just kind of go through and talk about what the final stats are, since it is a little bit of a complicated spell block. And if you want to pause the video to kind of copy these down, feel free, and I'll talk through them. So we have an armor class of 14 with 105 hit points. Our speed is only 20 feet, and I did not change any of the Mummy Lord's base attributes. So 18 strength, 10 dex, 17 constitution, 11 intelligence, 18 wisdom, and 16 charisma. With our proficiency bonus of +3, we are proficient in constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws, giving us the bonuses you can see. We're going to keep the fire vulnerability, and we're going to still be immune to necrotic and poison damage, but I have changed the immunity to non-magical physical damage, so that's bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing, to resistance instead. We still have dark vision and the passive perception, and we're going to keep the magic resistance feature and the rejuvenation feature the same. And I'm going to be dropping them to a 7th level spellcaster, Well, that's 8th. So still using wisdom, +7 to hit, save DC of 15, and we're going to keep all the spells on the list in the book that are 4th level or lower. Again, our spell slots are going to be 4 first levels, 3 second levels, 3 third levels, and 2 fourth levels in terms of slots. In terms of our actions, we still have our multi-attack, so 1 Rotting Fist and 1 Dreadful Glare attack. Our Rotting Fist is now +7 to hit and does 1d6 plus 4, that was a copyist error, bludgeoning plus 1d6 necrotic damage, and our Mummy Rot is going to be DC 14, and the disease damage will stay the same. Our Dreadful Glare save DC will be 14, everything else will be the same. We're going to keep those 3 legendary actions, so our options, I'm going to keep all the options. The first one is to attack. We can make 1 attack with our Rotting Fist or our Glare. We have our Blinding Dust one, which we can use to blind those around us. Again, with that save DC of 14. We have our Blasphemous Word. This costs 2 legendary actions. And what this one does is it's going to be a DC 14 and potentially stun all the enemies around the Mummy Lord. We have their Channel Negative Energy and their Whirlwind of Sand, which are going to go unchanged in terms of what they do. Also, I want to talk a little bit about their tactics here and how I would run them as the DM. So the first thing is the Mummy Lord is going to have precast the Shield of Faith spell on themselves. So when the players come in, you should describe this kind of magical, kind of defensive field they have around them. This will increase their effective armor class by 2 as long as they maintain concentration on it. I would also assume that they have precast Guardian of Faith basically at their starting point. So if that's a coffin or a throne or that kind of thing, their Guardian of Faith is going to be standing right next to them. And so anyone that comes into melee, the Guardian of Faith will slap. So I'm going to assume they have that going up at the beginning as well. And I think that would be a good thing to do. It'll kind of discourage anyone from running in and meleeing him immediately. And will potentially give your boss a little time to actually do something before the players destroy them. They also may have precast Animate Dead on some creatures, so they might have some skeletons or zombies perhaps lurking in coffins and sarcophagi around the room, and if so, mark off the slots that they've used to control those creatures. In terms of their tactics in the first round, I assume they would cast Spiritual Weapon either with a 2nd level or 4th level spell slot to just have that up and going and whacking the players with. And then I would probably cast a cantrip from range. They know Sacred Flame, which would do 2d8 radiant damage because they're at least a 5th level caster. And if someone's in melee with them, they would absolutely go for the punch. And from there, just kind of play your tactics as necessary. But with the Guardian of Faith and the Shield of Faith and potentially Animate Dead precast, you'll have your boss fight pretty well set up for this enemy. So thanks for watching. That has kind of been my overview of how I like to level up and down level enemies. The Dungeon Master's Guide is good for this, and tips and experience only help. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I definitely enjoyed making this, and I will see you next time.